On time, almost. So we are starting back. We are a little bit late, so I will kindly ask you to sit.
Wait.
So that we can resume with the presentations. Okay?
Espera.
Can you please sit? Rosa Ruiz, por favor.
María aún.
La confianza que, en fin, ya sabes lo que pasa. So, we are back now, and I am going to introduce you to Celia Martínez Yáñez. Just 1 minute for me to check the...
Toma, aquí, toma.
Okay. No, I have got
Okay.
it here. Thank you. Okay. Celia. Celia, apart from a good friend of mine, is here in representation of ICOMOS International. I'm going to switch into Spanish. Celia es profesora titular. Can you please be quiet just for me to be able to present Celia? Thank you. So, I was saying, estaba diciendo que Celia es profesora titular del Departamento de Historia de Arte de la Universidad de Granada. Es miembro del Board de ICOMOS Internacional y vicepresidenta del Comité Científico Internacional de Turismo Cultural de ICOMOS. Ha coordinado la redacción de la Carta Internacional sobre Turismo Cultural Patrimonial de ICOMOS, escrita en 2022, publicada, mejor dicho, en 2022, y es evaluadora externa del programa Horizonte 2020 del Consejo de Europa y directora de la revista electrónica de Patrimonio Histórico. Celia, muchísimas gracias como siempre por estar aquí. Siempre podemos contar contigo, lo cual es un lujo. Y bueno, cuando quieras puedes iniciar tu presentación. Gracias.
Bueno, el lujo es mío y quiero darte las gracias, María, a ti en particular, a la Alianza de Paisaje y a la Alianza de Sitios Patrimonio Mundial por esta invitación y también por el trabajo continuo que estáis haciendo para tratar temas que son muy relevantes y que son muy relevantes patrimonialmente ahora, problemáticos, y dar también las gracias al Patronato del Alhambra y al Generalife, que nos está reuniendo intensamente este año para trabajar en temas muy importantes relacionados con la Convención y con la gestión del patrimonio mundial. Y también quiero dar las gracias a todos los técnicos, a María José, a las personas que están trabajando para hacer el encuentro posible y a los traductores en cabina, que además les tengo un cariño muy especial. I will now switch into English. I've been hesitating a lot on whether to talk in English or Spanish, but I will follow the main line this morning. I think maybe that will facilitate a little bit among you the comprehension. For me, it's a very nice opportunity to talk about sustainable tourism on behalf of ICOMOS and its International Scientific Committee on Cultural Tourism in this occasion, not only because I think it's great to have the opportunity to debate these objects with World Heritage managers of sites, because you are the people that are in the first row of taking very complicated decisions about the management of visitors, which probably is one of the most difficult aspects in the management of our World Heritage site, but also because of the opportunity to do so with the other advisory bodies of the convention and with the representation of the World Heritage Center itself. It's an opportunity that it not always happens every day, so really, and again, thank you very much. I will also like to start reminding that certainly the last 2 centuries have witnessed an incredible increase in the homogenization of heritage sites and destinations worldwide. Many of these have been redesigned and packaged for mass consumption, while others have led to decay. And this suggests that there has been a reconceptualization of heritage history provoked by tourism, but also that tourism is an activity with historical, economical, social, and cultural consequences, which are much broader than those usually emphasized. In fact, tourism affects our understanding and our perception of the world in a way not only very intense, given the age of this activity, but also scarcely controlled. These pictures of the transformation of the Alps in the last century show us very well how much uncontrolled can be the effects of tourism on cultural heritage and in nature. And why? Well, because I was saying tourism is a very age activity, it's millennial. We can trace back from the classic antiquity. So centuries of tourism choices, centuries of tourism industry and heritage marketing have shaped and kind of unconscious but really powerful tourist DNA of the humanity that somehow determines people to visit the same places and at the same time for centuries. So I wonder, can we really persuade with the best tourism strategies and heritage strategies, can we really persuade international tourists to not to visit the San Marcos Piazza, but rather the Venice territory? Well, I'm afraid we can't. Because the truth is that it was not only Piranesi or the Grand Tour which prompted the overuse of certain sites. The first attempts to categorize World Heritage did so also in the past and nowadays. And the World Heritage List has, of course, put somehow the cherry on the cake. It increases the attractiveness and the visibility of well-known cultural sites and leaves in the shadows of tourists of the mental map many other sites that will deserve greater recognition. When we look at the convention, we also realize that the convention text itself doesn't talk really about tourism much. The operational guidelines have been dealing with tourism much a bit later, from 2005, and we don't have a lot of management plans. The management plans that are really addressing tourism are increasing now, but this has been a difficult issue to confront, and it's an important also issue to deal with for the future of the World Heritage Sites protection and the future of the convention itself. It is very clear that the use of heritage in economic growth-based strategies, which are outside the convention, has been really successful, but these economic growth-based strategies have failed to deliver equitable benefit share. It is also very evident that when tourism is responsibly planned, developed, and managed, it can provide direct, indirect, and induced benefits among all the dimensions of sustainability. But the truth is that what has exploded globally is rather, maybe sometimes, too many times, an unplanned and poorly managed tourism that increases the unfair and unsustainable exploitation and the banalization of heritage, not because, nothing in particular, but because what I see, and probably you also do in your sites or in other places that you visit, is that there are a lot of visitors who use the heritage sites as an scenario, as a must-see, not exactly as places that you really want to enjoy and share, but places that you visit really, really fastly and in an eroding way. And these have left tourism-dependent communities, but also have eroded somehow some heritage values and meanings. This turn of heritage enjoyment into consumption has had global adverse effects. There are no magic formulas for sustainability, as you all know, but everything depends on responsible planning. And what I want to share with you is how the ICOMOS International Charter for Cultural Heritage Tourism 2022 seeks for enhance this more responsible tourism. ICOMOS has always been conscious of tourism's deep effects on cultural heritage and on natural heritage too, because in his work as an advisory body of the UNESCO World Heritage Convention, ICOMOS has been dealing with the effects of tourism on World Heritage Sites, sometimes at times, especially at the beginning of the convention, when there were scarce orientations concerning tourism and scarce requirements concerning the sustainability of tourism. And it's not by casualty that ICOMOS, in fact, created its International Scientific Committee on Cultural Tourism in 1969, only 4 years after ICOMOS itself was created, with, by the way, its 25th anniversary, its 65th anniversary this year. ICOMOS issued the ICOMOS Charter of 1966 and 1999 precisely to have some orientations to deal with tourism when there were scarce recommendations specifically devoted to that relationship. And I always like to stress how, for example, the 1976 Charter was incredibly pioneering in quoting the ethical aspects linked to tourism. These charters are still relevant, but the truth is that the impacts of unmanaged tourism, climate change, global economic disruptions were demanding a new tourism approach that was grounded in people, in rights, in climate change adaptation and mitigation, of which we have already heard this morning, and the enjoyment and protection of heritage within the heritage commons theory, to which I will refer later. And that's why in 2017, we decided to start actualizing the 1999 previous charter, and I had the privilege to be elected by my committee, by the Committee of Tourism, to coordinate this goal that we adopted. As you see, we are very, very happy here in our General Assembly in Bangkok in 2022. The 2022 Charter calls for a transformative and regenerative tourism, which is against its perpetual economic growth paradigm. We strongly believe that heritage is of common nature and fruition, so it must be managed for the common good and with participatory governance. When dealing with the theory of commons, we are strongly and from a very conscious way doing a position against the commercial private capture of heritage instead of exploitation of heritage and the purely economic vision on development. We really want to encourage a shift towards development understood in terms of well-being and quality of life. We think that cultural tourism must be part and must be planned within heritage protection. And we are very much persuaded that cultural tourism is nothing but a tool to guarantee a fundamental right: the universal physical, intellectual, and emotional access to culture. So therefore, it must be a shared responsibility among all concerned actors and communities. The Charter encapsulates these irrefutable demands in several principles, which of course I cannot explain one by one. So what I usually do is to group them. Principles 1, 2, and 5 aims to manage tourism at cultural heritage places through management plans which are informed by carrying capacity. The concept of carrying capacity has been increasingly and hugely criticized. We still think that if we really aim to have a sustainable visit to heritage sites, and especially World Heritage Sites, this needs to be done according to indicators of the several dimensions of carrying capacity, not specifically limits, which is the core of the criticism, but rather to know which is a good approach to sustainability. And this, of course, needs to lead to do visitor management strategies, even if they are unpopular. Limit group size, time access, restrict entry when it's not appropriate, close sensitive areas providing remote access, increase opening hours, as the Alhambra has done, zone compatible activities, and bookings, which is sometimes is the only key to control and to manage visitors. And of course, it's very important that the tourism industry and the sector agrees and collaborates in the implementation of these strategies instead of going against them. And it's very important to require that they finance conservation of the sites which are exploited by tourism. The Alhambra is a very nice example of how a place that was completely overcrowded became an international example of the use of carrying capacity as an instrument to manage visitors. And it's also a very interesting example of how tourism has shaped conservation and restoration measures, and tourism has also shaped the perception of the sites. If it was a huge mass tourism destination, even in the 19th century, it became an example of sustainability later due to the use of these indicators, and today is also maybe time to think again the visitor strategy of the Alhambra. The Alhambra is planning its next plan director, so probably this will be an important aspect to deal with. The Principle 3 of the Charter aims to promote an accurate and sensitive interpretation and presentation of sites. And the main reason for this concern is because we know that public visitation is the main source of heritage knowledge and dissemination for most of the citizens, for most of the people that are not experts in heritage. So it needs to be grounded on scientific evidence and on local visions. We also believe that interpretation and presentation are key activities of cultural heritage protection, so they must be regulated, professionalized, and led by heritage disciplines. There are huge differences in Europe in this regard, and this is a subject that I would like to deal with in the workshop of tourism sustainability that we will have later. And we are also persuaded that interpretation must respect heritage authenticity, it must be inclusive, and it must address the protection and conservation issues themselves, as long as community rights and challenges. I liked very much how this is done in the Via Appia in Rome, where they not only interpret the site, but they interpret the civil fight for protecting the site itself, and they also interpret how this place is engaged in the Constitution of Italy itself. It's very nice. The Principles 4 and 6 recognize and reinforce the human, collective, community, and indigenous rights that are embedded in the cultural and natural heritage commons that are used by tourism by enhancing and demanding their participatory governance. This means ensure civil society involvement in the decision-making about these heritage commons. It means to provide inclusive access to economic opportunities, recreation and enjoyment, and a fair benefit share. It means to ensure gender equality and respect for diversity, and include traditional owners, minorities, and disadvantaged groups. And this is not easy. Heritage experts, we are not experts on engage different communities. We don't know how to target the important people. So I think that all of us, we really need experts on inclusive governance, and we need to increase our own capacity building in this regard, because we are demanding that involvement, but I'm pretty persuaded that not of all we know really how to do it properly. As an example of this, I would like to bring these images of the Ifugal rest terraces, when the Committee of Tourism had the privilege and the opportunity to assess a little bit the authorities and the communities about their future management plan. And our plan was doing so, recognizing farmers and farming activities as the key activities for preserving a traditional landscape, but also as the key activities to be showed to tourism and to tourists, and to rely on the traditional law and the traditional agriculture as the most interesting way to deal with a place like this. And I think it was a good strategy. Principle 7 is probably the most difficult one. I'm not going to deal in depth in this because our colleagues from IUCN has already done so, but I would like just to stress the very big contradiction between enjoying heritage and not contributing to climate action. This is something that we need to deal with collectively, but also from a personal perspective. And what is very clear is that we must consider local ownership, knowledge and practices, and we need to raise awareness about the consequences of climate impacts also for cultural heritage and communities. And this is also a subject that interpretation of heritage should be doing as well. As a great example, the best that I have known personally, applying these principles of climate adaptation and mitigation, even when we were not really speaking about that, is Siankang. And it's a place that I had the privilege to working with IUCN colleagues, again, within the well-known Connecting Practice project, in the second phase of this Connecting Practice project. And we were very much surprised to see how communities in general, but especially women, led sustainable tourism, basing the site experience of visitors in showing them how wise is the traditional management of cultural and natural commons, including water, including recycling, including sustainable travel to the place, including a very, very wise way of fishing and of harvesting to not deploy the natural and the cultural resources, and it was a very big knowledge. So I'm coming to the conclusions. And yeah, I know. But I really want to take this opportunity to share a little bit how it's been the Charter application today. The Charter has been translated into 11 languages, which is not bad for 2-3 years. The Charter has been implemented through the Cultural Tourism and Visitor Management Framework of the Organisation of World Heritage Cities, and it has been done so in coordination with a very important tool for site managers, which is the UNESCO Visitor Management and Assessment Strategy tool that is being coordinated and implemented within the UNESCO World Heritage and Sustainable Tourism Programme. Is a tool which is absolutely practical to assess sites and to implement measures. And I will refer to this later in the specific workshop. The Charter has been implemented with the United Nations Tourism Organization, and in order to promote accessible tourism, but which is respectful to the heritage integrity. The Charter has been adopted in the tourism law of Philippines and Colombia. It will probably also inform Serra de Tramuntana tourism management. We will talk about this later, and hopefully also Ribeira Sacra, which is also represented here. E-Commerce Italy is going to do a prize on how to implement the Charter, and we have, and I'm very, very grateful to have the Norwegian UNESCO Commission financial support to implement the Charter. I strongly recommend again to have a look at the VMAST, and we will deal with that later. Simply, I would like to share with you and to invite you to be involved in the in this principles application in the future. We are working in an operationalization document which will include a survey within e-commerce and then later to see how this charter can be landed in regional guidelines, tourism assessment and policy development support which are adapted to several sites. We are looking for a database of good examples of the application on these principles, and that's why for me it was so important to have the opportunity to talk with you and to collect the many good experiences that I'm sure that you can share with us. For us, it's key to continue cooperating with international, national and regional agencies and organizations that have already, many of them been included in the Charter draft itself, like UN Tourism, IUCN, which also participate in ECOM, the UNESCO World Heritage Sustainable Tourism Program, and the VMAS, the tool that I said before, that has been also coordinated with the Charter. We did a very important meeting here in the Alhambra some months ago, precisely to start this collaboration with the advisory bodies. And of course, we want to do that because we want to support the communities that are engaged with or that are seeking for a more transformative, sustainable, fair, and responsible cultural tourism. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Celia. It's a pleasure to listen to you once more, just to talk about this chart. This is a very useful document. I highly recommend, and that sometimes guides us to deal with this elephant in the room that some of us have, and that we try not to look at, because sometimes it's so inconvenient, so uncomfortable to look at, but definitely this will help us a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maria. Thanks again.
Decía que, gracias a Celia, que muchas veces el tema del turismo es como el tema incómodo, ¿verdad? Que está siempre ahí detrás, pero que nunca queremos afrontarlo, y que realmente los gestores de los sitios patrimonio mundial, algunos de ellos tienen un gran problema con el tema del turismo y otros lo desean con locura y no saben cómo llegar a tener un turismo como que aporte más a la comunidad. Y ellos, a través de esta carta, sí que nos dan una serie de pautas para hacerlo de una manera sostenible y de una manera que a futuro realmente sea exactamente eso, sostenible en el tiempo, que permita la preservación del patrimonio e incorpore al turismo como un elemento más a gestionar y no algo como para mantener así un poco de lado porque nos es incómodo.
Gracias, muchas gracias, María.
Y seguimos adelante entonces ahora con la presentación de Nicole Franceschini. Adelante, Nicole. Okay. So thank you, Nicole, for being here. She is here as the representative of ICROM. So I'm going just to read a few lines about her as well. Nicole works as a program office at the ICROM IUCN World Heritage Leadership Program. She has a background in Near Eastern archaeology and World Heritage Studies. Before joining ICROM, she worked as a consultant to international organizations, public organizations and companies, and she worked as a lecturer in heritage management. Además, Nicole ha estado muy vinculada a la celebración de los foros de gestores de patrimonio mundial que se organizan anualmente coincidiendo con la celebración del Comité del Patrimonio Mundial. Sin ir más lejos, tuve la suerte de conocerla el año pasado, en el que se celebró en Nueva Delhi, y sabe muy bien, en primera persona, qué se demanda desde el ámbito de los gestores de los sitios patrimonio mundial, y hoy nos viene a hablar de las buenas y malas prácticas en la gestión del patrimonio. Gracias, Nicole, por estar aquí. Adelante.
Gracias, María. I already set a timer because I'm Italian by nationality. I tend to be really long, to speak a lot, and to speak really fast. So this is the disclaimer before I start talking about everything. Just a small note. But before starting, I just really want to thank the Alliance for Cultural Landscape, Maria, also the Ministry of Culture of Spain, and the Patronato de la Alhambra y el Generalife for having us here today. I do think that Maria already mentioned we do have an international forum for World Heritage Site managers. It's very important to meet internationally, but it's really important to meet within your regions and to meet also nationally. And I do think that this is a wonderful opportunity to talk within the region and to really see what are the challenges, the opportunities that have been found and that exist also in terms of solutions within the region, sharing and discussing. So we're really happy to be here. Thank you. I said all these beautiful things just to say that I've been quite bad because I did not respect the title of the presentation, in the sense that I will not be talking about good and bad management, because none of you here in the room are actually working or trying to do bad management. Everyone tries to do good management and effective management, just that at times things don't work out. So I will be talking about management today to just give you an introduction of a couple of examples that exist out there of things that worked out well, things that can be uptaken and they can be looked at also in different contexts, but also to navigate a little bit more through the management system, to really look at what does management look like, because at times we are many in the room and what management means or the way we understand management can be very different. I will be starting from a common base, and this is the common base that will be published within the next manual. You remember the Managing World Heritage Manual that was published in 2013. We are right now working with colleagues of the advisory bodies and the UNESCO World Heritage Center to revise the manual, and at the base of the revision of the manual there was really a lot of thinking around what does management look like. What do we mean when we talk about the management system? And this is really very much what we came up with in terms of not only what the advisory bodies and UNESCO came up with, but this is really the results of working with site managers, mapping, understanding the variety also of management system that exists out there and governance arrangement that exists out there. So when we're looking at a management system, we are looking at understanding our heritage place. And I know that I'm coming to your favorite term, because if you are a site manager, I know you can't go one day without saying the magic word that is outstanding universal value. And of course, it starts exactly from there, to really understand what does the outstanding universal value means for me, for my site. What do I do with that statement? Where can I find the values, the reasons why this place is important, and where do I find the things, the elements that I need to protect and conserve? But over the years, and especially coming very strongly from site management, we have matured the understanding more and more that despite that, yes, within the framework of the World Heritage Convention, we do have our outstanding universal value. Heritage places, though, are very complex. And the outstanding universal value is one reason why a heritage place is important, but it's not the only reason why a heritage place is important. The outstanding universal value tells us the reason why this place is important at the international level, the reason why this place is so important that all humanity needs to protect and conserve it. But there's a lot of other heritage values at the national and local level that are important and they need to be conserved. And when we're looking at properties at times, what we see is that this site and these properties are made of many heritage components. The same place can be valued because there's a monastery on a sacred mountain. It can be a protected area, but it could have industrial heritage inside it. And we do need to understand our heritage places in the much broader context, which brings us really to understand and to ask ourselves and to ask also our communities, to ask all our fellow managers, to ask our rights holders and our stakeholders, why is this place important? To really go deep into assessing and understanding our heritage values, but also understanding what are the elements that need to be protected, to be conserved, and especially mapping them, putting them on a map. Explaining this, sorry, am I audible now more? For the translator, thank you. And to really putting them on a map that we can share with others. And I will come in a minute of the reason why it's important to share with others and to have things on a map, especially when it comes to development projects, especially when it comes to communicating with those that do not read the operational guideline every day and every morning like we all do. We know that the operational guidelines are your favorite book. We definitely know that. And I'm just giving you a couple of examples because it's very interesting how this is done in different contexts. And this one is Pimachow-Inaki, which is a site in North America, which is still part of our much bigger region, where that understanding of the reason why a place is important needed a strong input by communities, in this case indigenous people, to really understand those where divides could exist. There could be a national system that recognizes and defines a place important for very specific heritage region. reasons that do limit the understanding of the place. And in the case of Pimachow-Inaki, it was essential to have this discussion of why is this place important together with communities, to have a full understanding of the reasons why, but also to have a full understanding of what we need to protect and conserve when we are coming to the process of management and management planning. And similarly, colleagues in the High Coast, so in the transnational side between Finland and Sweden, a key element of setting the new management plan was really dissecting that statement of outstanding universal value. Is taking the statement and ripping it apart, literally, to underline what are my values, highlight what are my attributes, and understand what might be missing. What are the attributes that maybe were not directly mentioned within the statement of outstanding universal value? What do we need to understand further to have a strong base for our management planning process? And what is also important, and this comes from the Wadensee, is that all this work in understanding and mapping values does not only need to stay within the realm of heritage professionals. It's not just about agreeing within the heritage sector of the reason why a place is important, but making sure also that others understand the reason why this place is important. That we also explain communities, colleagues that work with the traffic department, with the harbor management department, with the trash collection department, the reason why certain things can be done and other things cannot be done. At times, we had this conversation, for example, with colleagues at times within city that they told us, the traffic department hates me because I always say no. But then I started explaining them the reason why I say no, and actually there was a bigger understanding. There was a bigger understanding that these certain things could not be done because they actually created trouble to historical structure. They created trouble to residents that live in an area. So it's really, really a good point and a good moment for us to foster that good dialogue. The heritage sector is a sector that works with many and needs to work with many, and we need also to come out from our own terminology and jargon to explain also the reason why something is important. And I know I'm standing in a place where I'm only talking about jargon almost, because I said a lot of outstanding universal value, but it's really important that these terms are also translated into your specific context and also within your specific legislation. Another key point was really the aspect that, and Alfred already mentioned this, heritage places do deliver benefits and services to society. And it's important for us to understand which benefits and services are delivered, but also to make a key distinction. The benefits and the services that are delivered are not the reason why we protect a place. We did not put a heritage place, a World Heritage property on the list because it generates money. We're not protecting it because it generates money. This is a benefit that comes from actually making sure that this place continues to exist. But we do see it because Celia already mentioned it, through tourism, direct, indirect employment related to tourism. Our places are key for education, for bringing communities together. They are also key for society. We do see that in a lot of post-conflict reconstruction effort, heritage is put at the center, and this was key, for example, with the Mosul project in Iraq. But we also see that heritage can be a place where we bring together economy. We have places where we have restaurants where we can foster also that connection with the zero-kilometer production, to have places of excellence, to make sure that within these regions we actually connect producers with those that need products, for example. This is the example of the Dolomites, where many years ago there was a project done to connect the valleys with the mountain huts so that the production was all done regionally and they would be certified. And similarly, this has also happened in the Upper Middle Rhine Valley, where for those that were willing to go through a World Heritage course, an introduction to World Heritage, to understand the reason why this place is important and be able to explain it also to tourists and visitors that came, a certification process was created. But to come back also to the aspect of heritage itself, because this is quite important, we see also that we're talking about a huge evolution of the heritage discourse, because today our focus also on speaking about values, speaking about people and speaking about places is something that has evolved through times. Colleagues 100 years ago mostly referred to monuments and sites. They referred to protected areas. Well, today we're really looking at protecting heritage places. And this is also to connect with what Berta was saying, the aspect that we are often looking beyond the designated boundaries of our sites. Because you all know that we can create the perfect glass dome and put a heritage property under it, is still not going to be protected. This is something that we have learned through many site managers. We have learned it more and more. Now that we are speaking of development, we are looking at impact assessment as tools. We do see that a World Heritage property can be impacted by a project that is built at times 600 kilometers away. This is, we see, for example, with dam projects. We see that at times wind energy projects that are 100 kilometers away from a World Heritage property, they can still have a potential negative impact. So there are aspects where, for example, there are things we can do that we need to address, which is the factors that are affecting our heritage places, but it's also important for us to be aware of the wider context. In terms of the factors of the things that site managers are tackling hand to hand, this is something that we get from you, we get from site managers through the state of conservation process, the reactive monitoring process, and over the year the World Heritage Center has collected this information to identify the big categories of what threats, so the factors that can affect World Heritage. We do see climate change being increasingly and becoming stronger and stronger an issue, but we also see a lot of development projects. Some development projects, they fall into the category of the evil and bad developer, we agree, but a lot of these development projects, we're talking about services to communities, we're talking about much needed services. And I think what's important to say is really to pinpoint the aspect that World Heritage is not against development. This is something that is very important, but World Heritage is against bad development. There are ways to foster the co-creation of projects, the co-creation of development projects that are in line with World Heritage, but they do require a lot more cooperation with planning agencies, with development agencies, so that they also fully understand what World Heritage means and what are also the criteria and the requirements of World Heritage. And this is something that especially colleagues in the planning and the development sectors have been sharing, that they do struggle to understand when someone comes to their office and says, but you know, you're affecting the outstanding universal value, and they clearly tell you, like, this is like speaking a completely different language to me, and I don't understand what this means in the context of a development plan or in the context of a strategic plan. And this is, of course, something that we have seen a lot of colleagues working towards this. But something also that we need to be aware of, and someone gets a prize if they understand where we are and which World Heritage property this is. Someone has a guess? You all see that it's a very densely populated area. This is Pompeii and Herculaneum. Pompeii and Herculaneum are in the most densely populated area in Italy and the second most densely populated area in Europe. Of course, this is something that the site management office cannot tackle hand to hand. They cannot go and tackle hand to hand the aspect of being overly populated. But this raises a lot of important questions on the aspect of how do we collaborate with key institutions, from the tourism agencies to the private sector that is with tourism, to our traffic agency, to even national level development agencies. And this is something that, even though cannot be directly managed, it's something that we need to be very aware of, because it can have an impact on the management of the property. The aspect of the wider context becomes even more relevant and more important when we're talking about disaster risk management. Floods don't stop outside the boundaries of World Heritage properties, earthquakes, and it's very important for us to understand the bigger context in which our World Heritage property are, both from a point of view of today, but also from an historical point of view, because we do have a lot to learn. And here I also want to connect to something very important, because Alfred already mentioned this within IUCN, but for a long time we had a strict division between nature and culture. It's quite extraordinary that we didn't have it. We have it, we enforced it, and now we realize it doesn't work and we're trying to undo it. But it's quite fundamental, because I'm an archaeologist by training. If you look at archaeological sites, the vast majority of archaeological sites in the entire world are in key biodiversity areas. which means that a lot of these sites have been protected because there was a strong natural heritage designation at times that actually allowed us to protect these sites. But that also what was already seen, that places where there were rivers, where there was a coastline, or places in a mountain were fundamental for human life. There was a reason why people settled in certain places. And nature, geography, was vital to also select these places, either for defense or for the provision of foods and the provision of services. In terms of governance also, something that is quite important is that we have come also to look at governance in a much more comprehensive way. And today we look at governance through three key groups. We're talking about managers, rights holders, and stakeholders. Managers, because we do also understand, and this was really thanks to the sharing of many site managers, is that when we're looking at a site manager, we're looking at someone who has a very incredibly big job. That is the job of coordinating big agencies working with one another. Agencies in many cases that have mandate responsibilities to manage World Heritage properties, and this coordination is essential and vital. We do have rights holders from indigenous communities, but we also do have at times owners. We have diverse owners within our World Heritage properties. Some of our historical buildings are in different ownership or in fragmented ownership, and it's very important also for us to understand the different rights. And as we have seen from many presentations, including Celia, we do have a really wide panorama of stakeholders. And managing World Heritage in terms of governance really look complex, and it looks like we're bringing together a lot of agencies, we're keeping informed a lot of agencies, we are also sharing information with a lot of different institutions, communities, and people. At times also, governance brings together different groups with two responsibilities. We see this, for example, in the case of rights holder and managers. We do have today indigenous communities that are also the primary manager of their heritage places and the World Heritage Place. But it's also important to make a key distinction between managers and stakeholders. We need to really understand who has mandate from a legal point of view to protect the site. This is something that is key to make sure that you can enforce the management of World Heritage. And in terms of the aspect of rights holder and managers, a very, very important example comes from Sweden, where we do see Laponia, for example, where the management of the site was given back to indigenous communities, to an indigenous organization, and this also required change in its legislation. This was vital to change the legislation to make sure that they had the mandate to do so. But we also see that different legal structures have been created to ensure also that there is a recognition of these different governance arrangements. Norway, for example, operates with a World Heritage coordinator, and then within their different reality, this is the case of Bryggen, for example, you have an advisory board that is made by a wider group of stakeholders, but you also have a World Heritage board that brings together the key management institutions to make sure that there is this constant exchange and there is actually constant work together. And engagement methods with stakeholders, with our managers are very different depending on your context and often also depending on your legislation. This is a wonderful example from Amani in Japan, where the engagement of community has actually brought the community to work with the scientific team. So communities have been trained to carry out scientific work, to work with research institute, to work with the management agency, to feel fully included. This is a small island and communities needed to be involved in the management process. Similarly, in Suwon, this is in Korea, this is a wonderful example because it actually started from an elderly group. This was really fantastic. They saw the city depopulating, they felt that they needed to keep young people in town. They created an association to support the management team, and today they're really the driving force behind supporting the management institutions, from creating birthday parties for fellow elderly, from supporting young people in finding an apartment, in finding places where to live, to creating moments that bring the community together. Also, at the level of legislation, what we see is that it's important to strengthen legislation. We have seen great examples of how legislation was modified to include World Heritage more, but also to see the ways in which legislation has been used. We do see that the legal framework is quite complex and quite complicated. We do see that there's a lot of legislation that overlaps, that also needs to look at how World Heritage is integrated into this. And as I was saying, the example of Laponia is quite extraordinary in this, in which local legislation was changed to integrate the mandate to manage World Heritage and give this mandate to indigenous and local communities. I'm concluding on the aspect of management because in this case we already talked about the aspect that managing World Heritage, we can't put a fence around it, and I do think that even those sites that operate with a fence around it can confirm that is not enough. It does require really wider coordination with institutions, but also with planning documents and with planning and strategic documents. Our management plan do reference a lot of other planning strategies, but it's also important for other plans, urban, territorial plans, to reference the management plan of a property, to really understand that the management plan is first adopted, is formally adopted by a municipality, is formally adopted by someone who has authority and mandates, and that then these are also well integrated into national strategies and into broader scale plans. And this is the only way for the management plan to become also meaningful when we're looking at a wider scale development. The aspect, I will leave these examples here because we will share through Maria all the links, and I will explain you also where these are. There's also a very interesting example from the Wadden Sea that you can see. I was just wanted to come to this because as part also of the new manual, we are looking at the manual setting the base and the foundation for the management system, but also to look at management planning. And management planning really starts from understanding values and attributes, to really understand our places, to really understand our governance arrangements, to be able then to set management plans that are effective. But a good management plan needs to start from a thorough understanding of management systems. The results part, because it's also here, the results is really the aspect of strengthening our management processes, strengthening our governance arrangements, and the understanding of our heritage place to really deliver those results. And in the new manual, what's very important is not just results in terms of conservation results, but also the aspect of how do we contribute to wider sustainable development, how do we also contribute to communities locally. Last slides, I promised to Maria especially, what can we do to foster effective management? Because this is where you all come in. And this is very vital for, first of all, for us to be able to do our job and constantly be informed about what works and what doesn't work. I brought back your favorite book and your favorite collections of articles that I do know that you've all read multiple times the World Heritage Convention. I do know that you all read the operational guidelines at least once a night before you go to bed. It's under your pillow. At night you dream of paragraph 172, development, and things that come to your mind. It's very important to read them, let's say, regularly. Every biennium is a suggestion, in the sense that they do get updated much more. The convention, you read it once, twice, maybe thrice, but it doesn't change. The operational guidelines do change, and it's important also to be up to date with the different revisions. The other part that is quite interesting is the World Heritage Resource Manual, and in the past 6 years we have been working together, the World Heritage Center, ICROM, ICOMOS, and IUCN, to redesign, rework, redevelop manuals that already existed and also manuals that are new, really to support the work of managing sites tangibly. The two are already out, the Guidance and Toolkit for Impact Assessment in a World Heritage Context. This is something that it's important for those of you that are dealing with development, that are dealing with heritage impact assessment, and that are dealing with the need of conducting an impact assessment that includes considerations for World Heritage. The Enhancing Our Heritage Toolkit 2.0, this is a self-assessment methodology that looks at assessing the management system. It doesn't require the involvement of any advisory bodies of the center. This is something that you can carry out with your management team to look at your entire management system to see what doesn't work, but also to see what works, so you can work towards redesigning, rethinking what is not working, but also strengthening what's working well. And that's also very important. Celebrating what is working is essential for the work we do. Not only celebrating, but also sharing with others. And the Managing World Heritage Manual will be released in July this year. I'm going to touch wood and everything, because we said this multiple times, but technically by the next committee it should be out. Other two important resources, because we talked about climate change, we talked about disaster risk management. We are currently working on the Managing Disaster Risk and Building Resilience for World Heritage. Title might change, it's a very long title, probably changing, but also the Climate Action Toolkit for World Heritage. And this, we know, are coming from a need on the ground. First of all, to integrate disaster risk management into the management system, but also to make sure that climate action is aligned with World Heritage. And these tools are right now under development. The Disaster Risk Management Manual should be out between end of this year and beginning of the next. Climate Action Toolkit is foreseen to be end of 2026, beginning of 2027. Fostering collaborative approaches, this is also something that is interesting for those of you that are working with universities, researchers, or you're thinking of working with universities and researchers. As a former researcher, I know that at times I focus more on what I need rather than what the site needed. What's important is that we actually find and create collaborative ways of working that can benefit both site management teams and the research institutions we're working with. And here you can read about 8 research agendas that have been set within the Heritage Place Lab, but you can read about the entire process of how site management and universities work together. Another important resource is the Wind Energy Guidance, and this is a project that has been led by the UNESCO World Heritage Center, of really understanding where we're talking about dealing with the World Heritage industry and also dealing with impact assessment in relation to wind energy projects, now being expanded to solar energy projects, and Berta might speak more about this. But really the importance of looking at these projects behind turbines, because turbines is only one element of something that is quite large, and also how we can better integrate World Heritage into wider strategies and planning. This is the last point, because you have seen a lot of case studies, and this is really where you come in, because in all these case studies, we're looking always for more case studies, we're looking always for more good approaches and solutions that you have found. At times, colleagues, site managers don't share the work they do because they tell us, yes, but we fixed that one thing. I have 600 more things to do that are not being fixed. Fixing that one issue is already a really big thing that needs celebration and that you have to share with others. I'm sorry that I'm using that you have to share with others, but it's important to share it with others, because you need to understand that if you had an issue and you solve it, there's someone else around the world who is a site manager for World Heritage facing the same issue that would like to know how you went about it and what did you do. So just to conclude that we're really thankful for being invited here, and we're thankful for the aspect that you give the chance also for us just to share all the new and upcoming resources, but really to strengthen once again that what's really important for us is to hear from you what works and what doesn't work, or what is out there in terms of resources, but also to hear from you what are the challenges, what are the issues that you feel have been abandoned, there's not enough guidance, there's not enough discussion about, because we're more than happy to also see what we can create and how we can work better with you. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Nicole. Muchas gracias. Mira, me voy a quedar con esas últimas palabras tuyas, porque para presentar a la última interviniente, es de nuevo Berta, como ya sabéis en el programa. Sí que quiero echar una mirada a lo que han sido las presentaciones de esta mañana. Y si os habéis dado cuenta, hemos empezado con un escenario de por qué estamos aquí y de dónde nace esta iniciativa. Después hemos empezado a hablar de quiénes somos los gestores de los sitios Patrimonio Mundial y cuál es nuestro mandato. Después Berta nos ha hecho una visión de los informes periódicos y del informe para nuestra región, para Europa y América del Norte. Y después hemos tenido la intervención de los expertos que han venido de los advisory bodies, es decir, de los organismos consultivos de la UNESCO, y que realmente marcan un poco la pauta sobre cómo debemos hacer las cosas. Berta nos va a hablar ahora, cuando quieras, Berta, sobre algo muy importante que es la comunicación, y es algo que ha estado sobre la base del formato que hemos querido establecer para este foro, y es que queremos dar la voz, quizá por primera vez, a todos los gestores para que realmente la información y la comunicación entre nosotros como gestores y el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial y los organismos consultivos sea bidireccional. Es decir, que no seamos solamente receptores de lo que el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial o los organismos consultivos tienen que decir, sino que también seamos inspiradores de lo que ellos tienen que trabajar para ayudarnos en la gestión de nuestros sitios patrimonio mundial. Entonces creo que por primera vez vamos a hacer ese trabajo, por eso estoy realmente emocionada con esta segunda parte de nuestro foro, que tiene que ver con el trabajo que vais a hacer los gestores para inspirar también y para concienciar tanto al Centro del Patrimonio Mundial como a los organismos consultivos de cuáles son nuestras verdaderas problemáticas, dónde están nuestras preocupaciones y en qué medida podemos colaborar mediante eso, un apoyo bidireccional, no unidireccional. Y en ese sentido quiero presentaros ahora a Berta de nuevo, ya sabéis quién es, pero ahora nos va a hablar un poco sobre la comunicación y cómo crear puentes para crear y mejorar la concienciación sobre la preservación de nuestros sitios patrimonio mundial. Cuando quieras, Berta.
Gracias, María. And I'm sorry to be the only one taking the floor twice, so please bear with me. And indeed, you will have your working table on communication, but Maria asked me to focus particularly on the communication between site managers and UNESCO. And it's not an easy one because, yes, it's, as you all know, and as I can easily admit, there are not that many opportunities to engage in direct communication. So let me start just by recalling more generally that, as it was mentioned this morning, communication is one of the 5 strategic objectives that were introduced to promote a more integrated and comprehensive approach to the implementation of the Convention. And if we go back to when it was introduced through the Budapest Declaration that probably all of you are familiar with, it did really stress the need for clear and consistent communication among all stakeholders, with a specific mention to site managers already at the time. And the purpose was to say that the communication is not an option, but is at the heart of the protection and management of World Heritage properties. And it's really about building a space for dialogue and decision-making that integrates the voice of all those involved, and of course that includes site managers. And if communication is not optional for protection and management, and as this is our favorite slide, I think, for UNESCO and the advisory bodies, we can just simply not make a presentation without this slide. But indeed, just to recall, protection and management is one of the pillars of the outstanding universal value. And of course, an effective management system depends on a number of features, on a number of elements, on the type of social, cultural, and ecological context, etc. And of course, it varies from one example, from one case to another, also simply based on the resources that are available. But in that famous book, in the operational guidelines, there are recognizes the diversity of management systems, but it does point to a number of common elements that any effective management system should have. And let me just mention 2 because I think they are key to communication. One is a shared understanding of the site's universal, national, and local values among all stakeholders. So all stakeholders is to be understood in the wider sense. So that includes rights holders, that includes managers, and of course stakeholders at large. And also that an effective management system needs to show commitment to diversity, human rights, and inclusive and participatory planning. And this is where site managers become essential, because you are the ones who can make this happen. You are the eyes, the ears, and the voice of the sites. And therefore, you are this crucial link between the global implementation of the convention and the practical day-to-day management of the sites. So while indeed it is the state parties that ratify the World Heritage Convention, it's international law. So in the eyes of UNESCO, it is the state parties that are accountable for the compliance with the World Heritage Convention, and UNESCO will never turn to site managers to ask for responsibilities. We will always turn to state parties. But we know that you are the ones turning these high-level commitments into tangible actions. And so it means that in the end, the credibility and the sustainability of the system does rely on your work. And the integrity of the sites, the sustainability of the site does rely on your work. So we know that you are in constant contact with a wide range of stakeholders, the national focal points. So these are the organization that is designated by the state party as the responsible organization for the implementation of the convention when it comes to relationships with UNESCO. And there are many different cases in Europe and North America. It can be the Ministry of Culture, it can be an institution that depends on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. We have all different cases. So as site managers, this is like your first entry point to communicate with UNESCO, but you all, of course, in your daily work, you're also in touch, daily communication with institutions. Nicole was giving examples of scientific boards that are associated to the management of the site, etc., and of course NGOs and local communities. But so your role is not just the implementation of the convention at the site level, but it's also this coordination and this communication with the different actors. To do that, obviously, site managers are the first ones that need to properly understand the attributes of the site and the reasons why this site has this international recognition. You're the first ones to advocate for the site protection, and you're also the first ones to explain what these attributes are to very different audiences, and audiences that have never heard about outstanding universal value, as it was my case before I joined the World Heritage Convention. It is far from being a self-explanatory notion, and so this explanation to the outside audience, and it's really important. So you have this role in raising awareness. You are the ones communicating about the site, about the outstanding universal value, and therefore you are, of course, a central piece in the World Heritage system. So UNESCO knows that site managers are a central piece in the World Heritage system, and I'll talk about it in a minute. And a lot of the work we do, we have the site managers in mind as the end users of those of that work that we use and of the products of that work. But that doesn't mean that we have a practical and realistic framework to communicate on a daily basis. We do not. So we do maintain a comprehensive database of site managers of all sites all over the world with the contact details, and these details are not open to the public, but they are accessible to UNESCO and to the advisory bodies. And we do insist at every occasion that we can with the national focal points to keep this data updated. Of course, the periodic reporting cycle is an opportunity where specifically there is an official communication to all national focal points to update the site manager's data, but we use every occasion, because for us, this information is critical. Even if we do not engage on a daily basis with you, it is critical for us to know not who, it's not about the people, but it's really about the institution. What is the institution, what is the organization that has been designated by a state party as responsible for the day-to-day management of that site. And so, as I was saying, the periodic reporting is one of the opportunities in which we update this information, but it's also one of the two opportunities that we have, the UNESCO World Heritage Center has to engage directly with site managers, or more or less directly, I will say. I mentioned it earlier this morning. It's a global conservation monitoring mechanism, and it has been designed as an opportunity for this cooperation and this communication at the national and the regional level, at different levels, and of course, with site managers, between site managers and focal points. We understand site managers as being at the heart of the periodic reporting process because, as you know, it has two parts, and one of it is really to have first-hand information on the state of conservation of the site. It's the only opportunity that exists, because as you know, the committee only looks at some of the state of conservation of sites, and it's usually those that are considered on the thread. So aside from those, I don't know, maybe it represents 10%, 8-10% of sites that the committee looks at it on a regular basis. The only opportunity for UNESCO to have a sense of what is sort of the state, the health of a property is the periodic reporting. And that's why there is a section that is directly filled in by you as site manager. So it means that for us in this process, you are the starting point on the communication chain. This is where the first information comes to us. Of course, the convention, it's international law, UNESCO is an intergovernmental organization, and even in the process of the periodic reporting, the submission of the information lies on the national focal point. And we know there are situations where the national focal point doesn't necessarily agree with information that is submitted by the site managers. But at least this is a process, a well-established process in which this needs to happen. There is then, as I mentioned also this morning, this reflection period that opens up, and we are in the middle of that. And there has been a survey circulated to all of you, to all site managers, also to reflect on what is the usefulness of this periodic reporting process at different levels, so including in your planning and management work. The results of this survey and of this reflection period will be presented to the committee in July. But I can share with you already a preliminary analysis of the reflection period based on the replies of site managers, so broadly, not necessarily only in this region. And it's important, I think, to know that while there is a sort of overall acknowledgement that this process has encouraged collaboration, has strengthened communication between site managers and focal points, and this is seen, there is an overall, a general positive feeling about this mutual learning opportunity between, let's say, national authorities and site level. There is also half of the site managers that have answered, that have replied to this survey, that sort of regret that they don't know what happens with the data that they submit in the periodic reporting process. So when I was presenting the action plan this morning, the regional action plan this morning, I was trying to modestly to address this issue, to show to the people that are in the room what has been done with this data, how it has been used to inform sort of a more forward-looking instrument. But there is this feeling, just from this very simple short sample of this survey on the reflection period, that there is a disconnect between the national and the local levels, and that of course suggests that there is room for improvement in communication. The other well-established framework in which there is a direct communication between site managers and UNESCO is the reactive monitoring process. Of course, reactive monitoring process only concerns sites that are considered on the thread. And I have to say that there is also some pragmatism when it comes to Europe and North America, because of course this is 40% of the inscribed sites. Obviously, proportionally, this is also the region where there are the highest number of sites under reactive monitoring, but proportionally, of course, this is only one part of the sites in the region. But of course, those that are under reactive monitoring for different types of threats, there is a well-established framework in which there is a direct communication between UNESCO and the site manager. And this is mainly the missions, the reactive monitoring mission and the advisory missions. I'm sure that you are all aware about the difference, but just to recall, reactive monitoring missions are missions that are requested by the committee, which means that then the report goes back to the committee, and advisory missions are missions that are requested by the states, so it's a voluntary process, and they need to be looking at specific issues. They can be management issues, they can be development issues, they can be level of implementation of corrective measures in case of list of properties in the list in danger, etc. So the terms of reference of these missions, be them reactive or advisory, are agreed between UNESCO, the advisory bodies, and the national focal point. Of course, it is expected from the national focal points to discuss with the site managers the terms of these missions. But of course, UNESCO doesn't get involved and doesn't have the capacity to certify this at the level of the preparation of the of the terms of reference of the management. Where we do have a clear opportunity to say, if necessary, where is the site manager, is in the program of the missions, because the programs of the missions are prepared by the state, they are submitted to UNESCO and the advisory bodies by the national focal point, and if it happens that when we look at the program or at the list of participants, we don't see a site manager, this is also why it is so important that our database is up to date. This is one of the first things we will do, where is the site manager? I'm not saying this is common practice, but it can happen. It can happen that we don't see the site manager in the mission program. How is that even possible? So, of course, those missions are a privileged moment. Again, they happen where there are issues. Otherwise, we don't go on reactive monitoring missions or on advisory missions, but there are key moments for communication between the site managers and UNESCO. It's probably the most privileged time we have for this sort of in-depth discussion. So, indeed, the World Heritage Committee is, as you know, the decision-making authority, and it is the committee that is responsible for inscribing sites, for monitoring the state of conservation of properties, etc. The committee and the members of the committee, the 21 members of the committee, work closely with the center, they work closely with ICOMOS and IUCN, etc. And while we are, as a secretariat, responsible for overseeing the implementation of the decisions of the committee, it is the responsibility of the state party to report on the implementation of those decisions. Again, when there is a decision by the committee, it means that there are issues with the site. Otherwise, the committee doesn't make decisions on that site. So in this decision-making structure, the site managers are not formally included. So there is a committee, it takes a decision, and the decision, it will ask the state party, what have you done with my decision? But we are aware, and the advisory bodies and UNESCO, when we are drafting the decisions, we draft the decisions and the committee adopts it or amends it, but we do have in mind that at the end of this chain, there are some of the decisions are to be implemented by the site managers. And we are aware that perhaps sometimes the very statutory, jargon, technical wording of those decisions, it's a very codified language, may not be easy to translate into action by site managers. And this is where we rely on the national focal points. There is also their work to translate those decisions of the committee into what can this, first of all, to divide responsibilities, because a decision of the committee can have 12 paragraphs and not all concern are to be actionable by the site manager. So there is this translation of the high-level decisions to the actionable changes and the site-level changes that the national focal points are responsible for, and we as UNESCO stand ready to support this process. But it's really important that national focal points feel this responsibility of translation. I don't have a better word, but let's call it translation. Nicole referred to it, so the annual World Heritage Site Manager Forum, it's really, again, a privileged opportunity. It's important to perhaps recall that it was not always there. It started in 2017 in Krakow, and it has been held on ever since, but it was, a group of people need to propose that and say, again, how do we bridge this gap into these state-driven conversations and decision-making procedures with the actual managers. So the Site Manager Forum, it is a privileged opportunity, and the committee has reiterated its encouragement for this to continue. It does give site managers, as some of you have witnessed, the opportunity to have direct access to the debates and the conversation, both on nominations, but especially on state of conservation, and to get some insight into the dynamics of the decision-making process, which has also evolved during the years, but I will refrain from commenting that. So beyond these formal sessions, the formal sessions of the committee, the forum really gives this, let's say, less formal opportunity for face-to-face, and as Nicole was saying, to really share experiences good experiences, but also bad experiences and things that haven't worked in other sites that can be insightful and can inform decision in other sites. Nicole did not publicize this year forum, so I hope she doesn't mind me publicizing this year forum, which will be held in Paris, as the committee has it has now been decided that it will not be longer hosted in Bulgaria and Sofia, but in Paris, and the focus will be on reactive monitoring. So priority will be given to site managers from sites that are under reactive monitoring. I'm sure it's not necessarily perhaps to specify this, but reactive monitoring doesn't mean that the site is on list in danger. It means that it's being, the state of conservation is being regularly scrutinized by the committee. So there is a number of them in the region, obviously. So please feel free to, the call is open until 4th of May. Until 4th of May, and the selection process will be done quite quickly. Of course, we look at priority is given to site managers that have not participated previously on this forum. And also the funding is really limited, and it's reserved to least developed countries, small island developing states, but also for conflict and post-conflict areas. Let me insist on this, not to sound as I am justifying the World Heritage Center, but also to give you a bit of sense of what we have the capacity to do and what we do not have the capacity to do. So, especially the Europe and North America unit, which I am responsible for. So, 47% of the list, that's 576 properties, so potentially 576 site managers spread across 51 state parties. So this high concentration is very impressive, but it presents a significant communication challenge for us. It's just not possible. We are 8 people in the Europe and North America unit. So just to give you an idea, it's one unit dealing with half of the list, and the rest is divided by 4 regions. So there is a dramatic situation of capacity, so it's just not possible for us to engage with 576. It's simply not possible, given the scale. That's why we perhaps rely more than other regions on the national focal points. And that's also why during the whole periodic reporting process and the building up of the regional action plan, we had to rely enormously on the site managers. And of course, we did encourage them to consult site managers before giving feedback to the center on the action plan. But I think some of the site managers in this region do not have 576 properties, but they also have significant number of properties, 50 plus, so it's also a challenge for them, I admit. But this is also to explain why, perhaps in comparison to other regions, the national focal points are a key partner for us. It's our easiest and most direct way to reach also to site managers. So that's why if this forum of European site managers one day it has a legal personality for us, it's a key partner. It will be a crucial sort of intermediary in our work that can ensure this sort of coordinated and strategic approach. Of course, as I mentioned in my very introductory remarks, it is only a part of Europe that is in this room. And for UNESCO, Europe has 51 state parties. So, Europe and North America. So, of course, it is our hope that this network will be able to expand and bring in site managers from countries in Europe that are less represented, and that actually, if I'm not mistaken, they're also less represented in the list. So there seems to be a sort of correlation between those states parties in Europe that have these associations and the number of sites that are inscribed on the list. This is by no means a call to have more sites on the list. This is please, no. This is rather a call for really engaging with your brothers and sisters, like I call them, from other parts of Europe who really can benefit from this networking. And I know there has been a real effort to try this for this occasion, but there are also limited resources. So to end with a more positive note, so while it is not feasible for UNESCO to have engage in a systematic and regular communication, we, with the advisory bodies, make really a significant effort to develop tools to support your daily work. And you've heard already about all those that are on the slide, so I won't enter into detail. But these are really the tools that we work on with you in mind. And just to mention the guidance for wind energy projects in World Heritage context that we're currently working on expanding to solar energy. We are looking for case studies to populate this augmented guidance. We have reached out already to a number of national focal points in the region with suggestions of specific sites on which we know there has been discussions on solar energy. And what we're looking here to illustrate and to document is the process. Whether it reached a positive or a negative decision in the end on installation or non-installation is the process really that matters. As Nicole was saying, is really the co-design of this project, and wind energy and solar energy in this region, also with guidelines that come from the European Union in terms of energy efficient, is crucial. So that's why this work has been initiated in the Europe and North America unit with the advisory bodies, but we are aiming at having tools that can be used outside of Europe and North America. All these tools have a global scope there. We hope they can be used outside of the region. But let me perhaps just mention one last tool that has not been presented, and I think it's important, and I hope that almost all of you have heard about it. It's not a very old tool. It's the World Heritage Online Map Platform that was launched, again, by the Europe and North America unit, but it has, the expectation is that it covers the World Heritage properties all over the world. It's the World Heritage Online Map Platform. This is the first georeference database that exists for World Heritage properties, actually for any UNESCO designation. Biosphere Reserve don't have one, geoparks don't have one, and we are looking actually at expanding this as a one single entry point to all UNESCO designated. And this is an open source, so it's open to site managers. We have made incredible progress in 2 years to have as many properties in Europe and North America. Now we are expanding to Africa as possible. It might sound amazing, but it didn't exist. I mean, and boundaries, as you all know as manager, is a huge tool. It's key in the management of sites. And we were working with A4s. Many of you, especially those that were inscribed in recent years, you already provided GIS on a voluntary basis at the time of the nomination, but this is not mandatory in the World Heritage System. So for Europe and North America, we used the periodic reporting cycle to go back to all properties to kindly request on a voluntary basis that you submit the GIS layer. So we do believe this is a useful management tool, also not just for site managers, not just for heritage professionals, but also for developers. Because when you're being approached or the ministry is approached by developers, if we think about wind energy, and you're not able to say, but where are the boundaries? I don't mean that the impact is only within the site, as was mentioned by Nicole, but you need to be able to have an easy access entry point where anyone can see where are the boundaries of the site and of its buffer zone. So these are I'm concluding. These are the resources, again, that are, I don't want to say that they compensate for the lack perhaps of systematic communication, but they have really been developed with you in mind, with the site managers in mind. We do encourage you to integrate them into your daily work, and also we encourage you to give us feedback. So to give us feedback, I'm skipping. This is the email address of the unit. We checked it on a daily basis. We cannot always reply in a day, but is it just if this can make feel the World Heritage Center a bit closer? Again, bearing in mind our limitations, our limited capacity, but we do have in mind the needs of site managers. I'm sure you have noticed that in all surveys, be it on the periodic reporting or others, there is always a room for site managers' feedback. When the different trainings are co-organized with ICROM, we are really eager in having the feedback of site managers to improve the approaches, to tailor the different manuals to your needs. And again, the last manual that Nicole referred to, the Enhancing Our Heritage, as she said, it's not a tool that you don't need UNESCO, the advisory bodies. These are really for you to assess the effectiveness of your own management system. So in a nutshell, yes, the communication has some very dedicated spaces. They are limited, they exist, but they are limited. But we do put a lot of effort in building the tools and the mechanisms that we hope they can be useful in your daily work. That's it.
Thank you very much, Berta. Gracias, Berta. Bueno, por aclararnos y dar un paso al frente también por todas las medidas que desde el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial se están implementando y bueno, ponerlas en conocimiento de todos, ¿verdad? Y gracias por ese apoyo expreso al trabajo que podemos hacer las asociaciones de sitios patrimonio mundial en Europa y la manera también de que a través de tus palabras has motivado a los que no tienen en sus respectivos países este tipo de asociaciones para que las constituyan, porque realmente podemos ser ese filling the gap, ese nexo de unión entre los gestores de los sitios patrimonio mundial y el Centro del Patrimonio Mundial, al igual que los organismos, los advisory bodies, que se llaman los...
Organizaciones consultivas. Organizaciones consultivas.
No me salía en español. Vale. Entonces, bueno, pues muchas gracias, Berta. Voy a pedir ahora, antes de irnos, tenemos 5 minutos para que por favor se unan aquí conmigo en esta mesa los coordinadores y relatores de los diferentes grupos, porque antes de irnos a comer os lo quiero presentar. Just 5 minutes before we leave for lunch, I will kindly ask the coordinators and raconteurs of the different tables, working groups, to join me here in the table, just for me to introduce you to them, to let you know who they are. Maybe you have had some emails with them, you have emailed them, but you don't know who they are, and I want you to introduce them to you. Okay, so please come here. So you can come around the corner, around the table. Yeah. So this will be Chris and Anne will be number 1. Chris and Anne is here. Number 2, and that will be Alfred and
You are the leader.
Hola, sí, hola, 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 sí, hola, hola, 1, 2. Hola, sí, hola, hola. Hola, sí.
And then number 5, yes. Sí, bueno, aquí estamos. So, I am really honored. Please. I am really honored and happy to present all the coordinators and raconteurs of the different working groups that we are going to have from now on. I think this is the core work of this forum and the real achievement of this forum, and it is to give you site managers the floor from now on. So let me introduce you to them and take the opportunity to thank them for the hard work that they have already done and that they are going to do from now on. And this is group number 1, the one related to site managers' role and mandate. This is Chris Blandford, you have already met him, and also Anne Ming Chi. So they will be the ones in charge of dealing with the group of site managers' role and mandate. Then this is Chema Lanzarote. He is from the Ministry of Culture of Spain with which will be in charge with Alfred, the Jimmys, to take care of the group of climate change. I must say something. This group is in English, but this group will be in Spanish. Alfred do not speak very good Spanish, so I hope just for you to help him, because his input is so precious that I hope that all the people, Spanish people in his group, can help him with his, and Portuguese. Okay, yes, true, and Portuguese people help him just to bring all his inputs to the group. Thank you for all your extra effort with the language. So the third group is Celia, you know her already, and Ana. Ana comes from the Tower of Hercules in Galicia, in Spain, and she will be the raconteur of the tourism group. Also a group in Spanish, even though there are people from France who speak Spanish. So you are very welcome to join this group. The fourth group is the one dealing with good and bad management practices. Let's say management. Yeah. Just following the lead of Nicole. And let me introduce you, you already know her, but let me introduce you to Tatiana Ditsdarevic. Wow, I already said it, I said it. Okay, Tatiana comes from Slovenia, he's a good friend, and he has been supporting very strongly from Slovenia this European network of World Heritage Associations, as long as Carlo Francini, who comes from Italy, from the site of Florence, and he is also the representative of the Italian Association of Cultural Sites, World Heritage Sites. Good. So this is the three of them will be in charge of the fourth group, management, let's say, and let's go to the fifth one, the one dealing with communication, and this will be Chloe Campo. Also, even though she's small, she's huge support to all this European network of World Heritage Association. And the same thing I could say about regarding the volume. Okay. So he's Einar. Einar comes from Iceland and is representing the Northern League of Associations of World Heritage Sites, representing Finland, Iceland, Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. All that many countries. So they both have supported this network as well very strongly, and they will deal with the communication building bridges group. Okay, so now you know who you are going to work with, and finally you are going to be gathered in different places. We will let you know about them afterwards. So now we are going out for lunch, and then please come back to this room, because we are going to then lead you to your working rooms, in which you will start with the different working sessions, and finally in the fifth working session we will gather again here for a plenary session, just to bring up with all the conclusions that we have reached during our working sessions. So have a nice lunch. See you.
Can we leave the stuff here? Because we have
I think that you can leave your stuff here. I will ask for the people to close the door, just for you to be assured that nothing happens with your belongings. Okay?